My son stopped asking for advice. After 68, so I did this. What if the day your child stopped asking for your advice wasn't just about them growing up, but about you slowly disappearing from their world without even noticing? It's a painful thought, I know, but if you're over 60, you might have felt it too. That quiet shift when your opinion isn't requested anymore. The silence doesn't come suddenly. It creeps in, one missed phone call, one unreturned message, one decision your son made without ever running it by you. And then you start wondering, do they still need me? Do I still matter in their life? It's not just about ego, it's about connection. Because the truth is, for many of us, growing older doesn't hurt because of physical pain. It hurts because we begin to feel invisible. Not unwanted, not unloved, just unseen. But what if that disconnection isn't final? What if it's not a sign that your chapter is over, but a moment asking you to rewrite it? If this message already speaks to something deep in your heart, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Every week, I share honest stories like this, not about growing old, but about growing whole again. Now, a question just for you. When your children stop seeking your advice, what do you believe it means? A, they've outgrown the need for your guidance. B, you might need to find a new way to reconnect. Drop your answer below. A or B? I read every comment. Now let's go deeper, because what I discovered after turning 68 changed everything. Some things in life slip away so gradually you only notice once they're already gone. One of those things is being the trusted voice in your own family. It doesn't vanish with a fight. It fades in silence. For years, I believed I was still holding that role, until one day I heard about a major decision my son had made, buying a new house from a neighbor, not from him. That wasn't just about a house. That was about trust distance and something even deeper, relevance. It's easy to chalk it up to kids these days, or say that's just the natural way of aging. But deep down, we know it stings. And what's worse is that no one talks about this, not at family dinners, not even with friends. We suffer it in private, pretending we're fine, while slowly shrinking into the background of our own lives. I've spoken to other men and women my age who've gone through the same thing. Their children love them, that's never in doubt. But somewhere along the way, their words stopped being invited. Their experiences stopped being asked for, and their presence started feeling optional. You begin second-guessing yourself. Should I speak up or stay quiet? Will they think I'm interfering? Am I just the old one in the room now? That internal questioning creates a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It's the loneliness of feeling like your insight is no longer needed, that your wisdom is now background noise in a world moving too fast. This isn't about control, it's about dignity. And when we lose that sense of purpose, the feeling that our perspective matters, our mental health pays the price. Studies from Harvard and the National Institute on Aging have shown that feeling socially sidelined in later life is strongly linked to depression, memory decline, and even shorter lifespan. But here's the truth. We need to remember we don't have to disappear. The invitation to be part of our children's world may not come the same way anymore, but that doesn't mean it's not there. We just have to learn how to recognize it and respond in a different way. Because connection at this stage of life is not about being needed. It's about being present in a way that still resonates. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize the disconnection I was feeling wasn't just about my son, it was about me. Not in a self-blaming way, but in a quiet, honest way. At first, I thought he had simply grown apart, that his silence meant I was no longer useful, no longer important. But the deeper truth was this: I had unknowingly stepped away from the kind of father he could still turn to. See, it's not that my son stopped valuing me. He stopped recognizing me as someone he could relate to. I hadn't become less wise, but I had become harder to reach. Over time, without meaning to, I shifted from being curious to being critical, from asking questions to giving lectures. And like many people my age, I started telling more than listening. That's when I realized the issue wasn't that he didn't want connection. It's that I was no longer offering the kind of connection he could say yes to. So many of us fall into that same trap. After 65, we think we're being helpful. We offer caution, experience, advice. But if it's not asked for, or worse, if it feels like judgment, it builds walls, not bridges. And younger generations are quicker to retreat than we might expect, especially when love turns into pressure. I started noticing something even deeper. I had stopped sharing who I was becoming and only repeated who I had been. My son didn't need a history book. He needed to know his father was still growing, still reflecting, still human, still real. We're often told that growing older means becoming wiser. But if we're not careful, it can also mean becoming more rigid. The world changes, our children change. And if we don't change how we connect, we risk being left behind, not out of rejection, but out of misalignment. I wasn't losing my place in his life because he didn't care. I was losing it because I had frozen in a version of myself that no longer fit the moment. The stories I shared were outdated. The advice I gave came from a world that no longer existed. What he needed was not a father from the past, but a father who was present. That realization humbled me, but it also gave me power. Because if I was part of the problem, then I could also be part of the solution. And what happened next, how I slowly rebuilt our connection, began with one unexpected decision. I didn't need a dramatic moment to change, no big argument, no tearful confession, just one quiet morning, sitting with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, realizing I didn't want to feel invisible anymore. That was the start. I didn't call my son and demand more respect. I didn't send long texts asking why he didn't talk to me like before. Instead, I looked at myself, how I spoke, how I listened, how I showed up. I asked the question we rarely dare to ask after 65. What if the way I connect no longer works in the world my children live in today? So I stopped offering unsolicited advice. I stopped beginning sentences with "back in my day," and I stopped assuming that being older automatically meant I had the right answers. Instead, I began practicing something that had grown rusty in me: curiosity. I started asking questions, not to pry, but to understand. What's that new project you're working on? What's been stressing you out lately? I listened without trying to fix. I reflected without needing to teach. And slowly, something shifted. I also started writing. At first, just for myself. Small stories from my past, reflections on what I've learned, even regrets I had never voiced aloud. But then I did something bold. I emailed one of those stories to my son. Just a short note: thought of this today and wanted to share it. No advice, just a memory. He didn't reply right away. But the next week, I sent another. And after the third, he called. "Dad, I've been reading them. "They're really good." That's all he said. But it was more than enough. It wasn't about the content. It was about the tone. I wasn't preaching. I wasn't pressuring. I was offering, sharing, inviting. And it reminded him and me that I still had something valuable to give. Not direction, not control, but presence, perspective, and warmth. In that process, I rediscovered something I hadn't realized. I lost my own voice, softened by time, not sharpened by pride. Sometimes reclaiming your place in the lives of your loved ones isn't about stepping forward louder. It's about stepping forward differently. It's not too late to change the way we relate. And it doesn't take grand gestures, just a willingness to grow even in your 70s, especially in your 70s. Because age doesn't limit our value, stagnation does. When I stopped trying to be right and focused on being real, I became visible again. And I promise you, being seen, truly seen, after years of feeling like a shadow, it's worth every small change, every pause, every humble moment of self-reflection. That's how the journey back begins, not with a demand, but with a quiet shift in the way we offer ourselves to those we love. Here's what surprised me the most. Restoring the bond with my son didn't require me to become someone new. It simply required me to unlearn a few things and relearn the kind of presence that fosters trust, not tension. As I began shifting how I showed up in his life, 3 clear lessons emerged. And I believe they don't just apply to me. They apply to anyone over 60 who feels that quiet, growing distance from their children or grandchildren. First, I learned that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you radiate. There was a time I believed my age automatically entitled me to attention, even obedience. But I came to understand that real connection doesn't come from authority. It comes from energy, from how you make the other person feel. When I stopped approaching conversations like I had the final word and instead treated them as an exchange between equals, everything changed. My son didn't need a lecture. He needed eye-level respect, not for who I used to be, but for who I was willing to be now. Second, I realized that silence doesn't always mean rejection. It often means discomfort, and discomfort can be softened by consistency. That's why I kept sharing gently and without pressure. Not every email or memory received a response. But that wasn't the point. The point was to show up without an agenda. Over time, that quiet consistency sent a powerful message. I wasn't trying to force my way in. I was making room for when he was ready. Third, and perhaps most important, I learned that presence is more powerful than advice. In our generation, many of us were taught to lead by telling, by instructing. But I began to see how deeply healing it is just to witness someone's experience without needing to fix it. One day, my son opened up about a hard season he was going through. I didn't offer a solution. I didn't quote a proverb. I simply said, "That sounds really hard. I'm here for you." That moment did more to rebuild our relationship than 100 useful suggestions ever could. These 3 lessons aren't quick fixes. They're not tricks. They're quiet shifts in how we carry ourselves with humility, with openness, and with grace. If you're watching this and you've ever felt the sting of being left out or left behind, I want to tell you it's not too late. You don't have to disappear, but you may need to relearn how to be seen. And being seen, really seen after 60, is one of the most healing gifts you'll ever give yourself. So what have I truly learned? That growing older doesn't mean growing irrelevant. It means we're offered a new kind of power. The power to connect from a place of humility, not authority. The power to speak, not to correct, but to comfort. And the power to be seen, not for what we've done in the past, but for how we choose to show up today. If you've felt the pain of being left out or unheard in your own family, you're not alone. But what I want you to take from this video is that the disconnection you feel is not the end of the story. In fact, it can be the beginning of a new chapter 1, where you lead with quiet presence, deep listening, and the kind of wisdom that doesn't shout, but resonates. Start small. Ask more questions than you answer. Share stories, not lectures. Show up not because you're trying to reclaim control, but because you want to rebuild trust. When you practice this day by day, you may find your family slowly turning back toward you. Not because they have to, but because they want to. That shift from being needed to being cherished is something we can all create even after 60. So here's my question to you. What's one small thing you can do this week to reconnect with someone you love without needing to be right or to fix anything? Share your answer in the comments below. I read everyone. If this message spoke to you, and if you'd like more stories and reflections like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you feel moved to support this space through a donation, no matter how small, know that it helps us keep creating honest, heartfelt content for people just like you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for still showing up for yourself and for the ones you love.